the largest percentage of New Year resolutions surround physical wellness. How do you give them the tools to get started on that wellness journey?
You need to ask yourself, why am I doing this? This is the physical aspect, right? So why? There's so much the trainer or coach can do because they're seeing you for an hour, 3 times a week. If you're expecting that trainer to transform your body doing 3 hours or 4 hours a week, there's nothing they can do. So the rest has to fall on you as a person.
So accountability.
Oh, absolutely. You have to ask yourself, why? What is your why? Why are you doing this? And then you commit to that why.
So welcome to the Me Inc. Podcast. The Me Inc. Podcast, again, explores the human potential and this interconnection with emotional intelligence. We highlight stories with individuals living a fulfilled life in a way of trying to gain or glean some of their practical applications, some of the things that they will actually do to show up as their best selves every day. The Me Inc. concept, it puts us forward as an enterprise, or us as our most valuable assets. And what we'll discuss and what we'll talk about is those investments that we should make in our physical, spiritual, and mental well-being for us to show up our best self through each phase of this experience called life. So for today, I'm excited for this episode, and kind of ties back into one of the last episodes. So we're starting in a bad place because I get to introduce a dear friend, but I've had, if you listen to the first season, I've had issues pronouncing or enunciating the friends, the names of my African friends, right? So for this episode, I have with me Obi Chuku. Okay. Obi, how's that?
I would say an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. I'll take that as a passing grade. So today I have with me Obi, a dear friend who is a wellness and life coach. And we're just going to talk today about Obi, who he is, how he's gotten to where he is in life now, what he's passionate about, talk through some of the practical examples of how we can apply his insights on wellness into our lives. And then, as always, we'll actually talk about how Obi manages himself as a practitioner in this space and in the wellness space. How does he manage himself? What is his process to showing up as his best self every day? We also intertwine that with the emotional intelligence assessment, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, since that is the self-awareness tool that I will use. So more to come on that. But Obi, welcome to the show. So happy that you're here.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you for having me on the show.
All right. So where we start always, tell us a little bit about who Obi is. What is it that you do and how you try to walk through this world?
Great question. Who is Obi? I would say Obi embodies his own essence.
Okay. Right? Obi, tell me a little bit more. Go ahead.
So now, if we talk about background, born and raised in Nigeria, in the city of Port Harcourt, and I left the country 2010 and moved to South Africa. And in South Africa, I lived in 2 cities. So in Johannesburg for a year and in Cape Town for 5. Yeah. And in 2016, I moved to the States, and I was in Washington, D.C. from 2016 to 2019. Until finally I moved to Jersey, where today I am your neighbor.
All right. So this is cool, right? So on the other end of this, the audience get to hear some of the amazing conversations that we would have because we share a common background, right? Immigrants to the country. We grew up in the Pentecostal faith. So we have that religious background, and then all the rebellious things we've done
to push back.
To push back or find our own way.
Yes.
I have this concept: to see the world, you have to see the world. And we often talk about you changing, starting in Nigeria, home, and then moving to so many different places. What's prompting the moves, and what's leading you to take those significant shifts, if you will?
Good question. So, how I approach the world and my view is you have a story which you're telling yourself of how you want to live, and you sort of have to let go. When I mean let go, you try not to anticipate the outcome. All right. So circumstances may happen, life may happen, but you still have that story and of how you want to lead your life. And when all this happens, you just, you move from one place to another, and you get to see the world from different lenses, perspectives, meeting people, connecting, seeing. I find it fascinating in my world.
Yeah, but that's change, right? And few people seek out change. What's pushing you to change or seek those new experiences? And I'm sure we'll come back to the importance for embracing change, but what are those things that's pushing you to seek different?
Okay, now let's take it all the way back to Nigeria. Growing up, like you said, a Pentecostal household. And this was one where my dad, he was he was a fascinated man. And, he studied here in the States, and, philosophy and everything. And back home, he was an inspector of education. So my mom was also a teacher. And when you have your dad and mom in that realm, it's all about structure. You have to wake up at this time, you have to eat at this time, you have to study. And curfew for me was, I'll never forget, 6 p.m. But you can imagine waking up in the morning, going to school, coming back home. And my dad also had extracurricular studies at home. So at 4 p.m., I'm studying till like 6. And at 6 p.m., I can't go out because it's curfew. So at a certain age, I think in my mid-20s, I just wanted to explore. I needed to get out.
Okay.
I just felt like there was more to explore in life. So I just left. Yeah.
You just left. Okay. I like to tie it into my deal. So same things. It was very, very structured for me. But we moved here because our parents wanted to do it, right? So I think very different than you, the change that I had, most of the change in my life, it was forced on me. It wasn't that I was exploring or seeking it out. So that's going to be one that we can actually explore a little bit more. But it is a good one, right? To set out on your own, to want to explore, to want to see what's more, what's beyond just the perspective or the prism that we're given in those early ages of life. You're finding yourself to this wellness practitioner now, and we're going to define your idea of wellness as we're going on. But how are you finding yourself to this? How have you found, as you've moved from 4 countries to a different continent, how are you finding yourself? What are those experiences that's forming your worldview now? What are some of those things that you're taking with you and then trying to put back out into the world to help others?
Before leaving the country, I worked as a police officer for a couple of years. And I wanted to study more about the human body. I found it fascinating. And I did get my degree in exercise science, which then, I became a trainer, a personal trainer. But I still wanted to grow. I mean, it's just, there was more to just lifting weights. There was more to counting calories. There was more to that. And I was fascinated about human behavior. So, of course, I continued studying about that.
I'm smiling to myself because I started making the joke a couple of years ago. There's, much more to wellness than lifting heavy stuff up and putting it down. So every time I always smile about when someone says, a cop, you started as a cop. What did you learn in that experience what does it inform in how you actualize the world today?
Starting off as a police officer, I went through the training. And in that training state and phase, you learn about yourself. You learn about resilience, not just physical, it's mental. It's a different approach. And when you're being put out in the field, I was more in the operating from the office side of things. So I wasn't right out there, like where like where the fun is happening. I was more administrative sector. Yes.
But what are you learning about that portion of it? Like, because it's still formative, right? So one of the things, like my brother now is a police officer, and one of the things that I think he still reconciles is that no one appreciates the work that police officers do, or how challenging that is. And I talked about it before, like it's a fine line to walk, right? But what are you learning before you move from one thing to another?
So I agree with your brother's sentiments about no one will appreciate that, but you also, as a police officer, need to understand, I'm saying back home, not here, there's a stigma behind that. So you need to know, like, okay, that stigma is coming from somewhere. What is it about the police force that the people don't really like or they detest? So you need to understand, like, okay, I'm in this. This is what is given to the public. However, I need to be mindful of how I interact. So now your approach should be from a place of empathy as opposed to force.
Okay. And I think that's probably really, really interesting, right? The learning that we approach from an empathy standpoint rather than force, right? So is that,
yes.
I heard recently a framework of, to get to the things that we'd want in life, to learn, to grow, to move forward, it is an intersection between having curiosity, having empathy, and then the courage to ask for the things that we want or the things that we would need, right? But okay, so we'll probably come back to that. But so you then move to South Africa, exercise science. As you're thinking empathy, you're thinking curiosity, wanting to explore. How are you shaping your definition of wellness then as you go through that experience?
So moving to South Africa and getting the degree in exercise science, during that process, I was interacting and I am still interacting with people. So, and again, this is a different country, no family at that time, no friends. So it was basically, okay, you're here, either sink or swim. What do you want to do? So I decided to just explore. And when you explore, it's all about asking yourself, hey, what am I expecting? It's like, are you looking for the good in people? You have to, give out that energy for you to receive it, right? So I go in with the mindset of positivity, gratitude, and, expectation, expecting the best and abundance. So I learn as I move through life and interacting with people and growing.
Yeah. So I think the words gratitude, mindfulness, abundance, it's all things that's in this space of wellness now, right? You hear it all. If you roll back, how are you defining it? And I want to make sure that I hear you, but how are you defining it as you're going through those experiences? Because it's a very different time, right? Are you still saying it is gratitude, or still saying that it's abundance? How were you actualizing it back then? Because I think sometimes so much is lost in sometimes the definition of things that we're already doing it, but don't see it because we're trying to fill it into the way someone else is defining it. So just how are you defining it as you're approaching things? Are you approaching this new phase of life?
So when it comes to gratitude and basically expectations, we talk about the think and feel. So you want to be in a state where you're grateful for actually what you don't see, what you can't see, and you don't have.
What's an example of
But
that?
so let's say you want something to happen in your life, right? How would you be able to shut the world out and focus on what that is, right? And put yourself, your mind, your body into that state where you're not just thinking, you're feeling. So there are two different things. You can think stuff, think whatever, but you have to feel. So you want to feel as it is present, right? Put your body in that, like that phase or that realm where you're feeling it, like, yes, it's coming. And as you move on in life, it will show up in whatever you're dealing with, universal intelligence. Yes. So it's going to give you what you put out.
So we all talk about gratefulness, mindfulness, abundance.
Yes.
What's an example of grateful as you're moving through this experience? And I'm just exploring it because it's all of these are all things that I'm working on, right? As I think about how I manage me, how I manage my discontent. Like in those settings, what's the gratitude practice?
Personally, in settings like that, what I do, I look at how far I've come from zero to where I'm at the moment. So that journey, I'm grateful for that. And I'm also grateful for what's to come. So by doing that, I put myself in that phase of expectation that something good is on the horizon. So that's how I've been able to move in life and how I've approached life. And it's
I'm smiling. I'm smiling, right? Because we talk about it and it is hard, right? I was giving someone some advice a while ago. It's not necessarily gratitude for or grateful for where you are in the current time, because I wrote a while ago that comparison is the thief of joy. So a lot of times, like if I think about where I am in life and where I started from, I am so far ahead of where I ever thought I would be. And usually like think about it as being a hurdler. Like as soon as I take my eyes off of my own situation or my circumstance and I start comparing to others, that's when I actually kind of operate at a different level, right? So I hear you on that. You're grateful, you're mindful, and then you talked about abundance. When you say abundance, we're going back into it. You help me get the abundance part of it, because I was not necessarily a believer in those concepts until recently, right? And you're saying you're practicing it for a while now. So what is abundance in your head?
I mean, abundance, again, this is all how I approach the world and my belief system is abundance is expansion, growth. So it can be on any facets of your life. So for me, it could be friendships. So there would be growth. It could be finances. It could be whatever you want. So that's abundance. So you really want to focus on what it is in your life. Personally, it was a stretch of so many things. So yes. And back to expectation, you have to put yourself in that mindset where, oh, this is how I want to live my life. And things are going to, fall into place how I want them to.
What gives you the confidence so that it'll fall into space, right? Because sometimes it's okay to embody it. And you started with you embodying your own essence, right? How do you explain to someone these concepts in a way that will land with them, right? Because if I am in my logical mind, I have to be able to totally predict where it will go before I even take that first step, right? That's kind of where I operated before. How do you take that information and make it pliable for an audience member who's listening who may not embrace that perspective on life?
Okay, so if you predict an outcome, it's a routine. There's nothing there. You know how it's going to end. Right. So the beauty of us existing and living is we can't really predict it. Now, here's the problem, and what I've come to realize in also my field of wellness, we'll talk about that, is actually not the templates of, oh, these are the exercises, these are what I have to eat and, X, Y, and Z. It's the underlying stress. People are stressed.
Okay.
And then when you look at, if you dig deeper into that stress, you will find out that you are trying to predict an outcome that is out of your control. You are going to stress yourself to the ground. So it's the letting go side of things. Like, again, whatever it is you want to create, creation are done in two places, mental, and the last, which is your sensory. You tend to see it. So the first is the mental side of things, where you sort of create how you want to see yourself living.
Right.
You create whatever it is you want to do. It's your life. It's, hey, you've been given that power to do it. You create that, but you don't hold on to, how it's going to show up, or, this is what you've put out. Again, we're dealing with universal intelligence here. So this is what you put out, but you also want to feel it. Back to the gratitude. You also want to feel it. Put yourself and mind in that thought, like you're excited, so when you move on, it's not about putting yourself in that state for an hour, like meditation, guided meditation, and then you fall off. You try to maintain it. You maintain it over a period of time. Your external world will start to give you feedback to what you're putting out.
That's interesting. So I look for really practical ways of defining some of the things that's in the sphere now, right? So when you talk manifestation, you talk all of those things, I think, and if I'm hearing you, it is acting and behaving consistently in a manner consistent with the outcomes that you're seeking for your life.
Yes, that is correct, because your thoughts, feelings, and actions, that's attitude, your personality, is intertwined with your own reality, your personal reality. So whatever you're thinking, feeling, and doing, all right, it's intertwined with Nigel's world. So we can sit down together and you are frustrated and someone next to you isn't, because it's all in your world.
Okay. That is it, right? We only have our lived experience. That's it. Yes. Okay. So wellness, but I think, and you know what? It's so interesting whenever you hear individuals share their stories about their journeys. You're forgetting so many things, right? So let's go. I want to touch on some of the things. So you weren't just a police officer. You were a model. You moved to the U.S. You became one of Equinox top trainers in the DC area. But
I was the trainer.
But I think one of the stories that was most impressive was how you became the trainer, or how, when you arrived here, how you got hired at, that's a story I think is worth sharing, because there's so much power in asking or having the bravery to take action on the things that we want to do, right? So just share a little bit about that story for the audience, and then we're going to go into the physical part of where you started, right?
Okay, so I moved here in 2016, and prior to me moving, I was a trainer. I was, that was my job, and that's how I was making a living. And I moved here to DC. So after getting all my documentation ready to go, I then thought, okay, I'm not really accustomed to the US and the lifestyle. This is all new to me. And I remember I held up my phone, I went to Google, and I keyed in top luxury gyms.
Right. Okay.
And Equinox popped up. I'm like, okay, that's where I'm working. And so there was no hesitation. There was no, can I get there? I looked at it. I'm like, oh, it's not far from where I live. Okay, this is where I'll be working. So I already put myself in that feeling of, okay, this is the distance commuting to work. Right. Mind you, I had not been there. I was like, oh, it'll take me 15, 20 minutes to go to work. Okay, so I get home at this time. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I decided to then go to the gym. I walked in there and I asked the front desk lady, I said, "Hey, I want to speak to the manager." And then she says to me, "You mean the general manager or fitness manager or personal training manager?" And a part of me goes, "Oh, wow, I didn't know there were so many managers." Coming from South Africa was different, you know? So I said, "Personal training manager." And she goes, "Oh, yeah, okay. He's not available right now, but here's his card. You can send him an email." So I take that information and go home. I sent him an email. There was no response. And I gave him 2 days, still no response. I went back there. And there was another girl, another lady at the front desk. And I asked her, I said, by this time I've gotten the name of the personal training manager. So I showed up just, like, "Hey, I'm here to see," I mentioned his name. And she goes, "Oh, do you have an appointment?" "No, but I sent him a couple of emails and I was here 2 days ago, but I should see him today." I was
Yeah.
just like, matter of fact. And she goes, "Oh, give me a second." What, she turned and there was a trainer walking by. And she called the trainer and said, "Hey, is the manager, personal training manager around?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's in his office." Like, "Yeah, this man is here to see him." And he takes me to his office. And he walks into his office. Now the manager is with someone, right? So this trainer walks in and said, "Hey, there's someone here to see you by the name of Obi." So I peek in and he looks at me. I could see like he couldn't place my face. He wasn't like he didn't know me. And I
Mhm.
just gave him the sign like, "Wait, I'll wait outside when you're finished." He's like, "Okay, okay." So I sit back and when he was done with his whomever he was with, he then asked me to come in. And I walk in and he's still trying to like figure it out. So when we both sat down, I looked at him, I go, "We've never met before. This is the first time.
Yeah.
But I want to be a trainer."
That's so ballsy, right? I wish I would have that confidence to do that because I was telling someone recently about our limiting beliefs as actually one of the biggest things that actually get in our way of doing it.
Mm,
And, through business school, one of the classes that we had was negotiations. And in that situation, you're negotiating for your best self, right? You're
yeah.
negotiating for you and the things that you'd want to do. But there's no limiting beliefs. You started with, "Hey, this is where I want to go, and these are the actions that I need to take." And you waited and you followed up, you re-navigated. How do you teach that to someone that you're, let's say, coaching? How do you impart that? What is a good place for someone who is working on exploring their limiting beliefs to start?
So now if we shift from wellness to like, let's say life coaching, then they're parallels. So it's kind of similar, but not so. With the life coaching or as a coach, you're leading with curiosity, right? So you're not telling them what to do. You're not asking them to do X, Y, and Z, but it's just childlike curiosity, asking questions and getting them to see like, "Hey, all this, whatever it is, like, this is the stories you're telling yourself,
Right.
to, make that move, make that leap."
And then if you're dealing with me, let's say, and I can't make that first move, what is something that an individual who finds themselves in that situation can actually, help them move forward? What's just one little practical insight?
If this is whatever it is you're going through in life and you're stuck, it's something you're telling yourself. It trickles down to this self-image
Mhm.
where whatever self-image you have you hold of yourself, those are they set the boundaries of expectations and performance in your life. It's your self-image. So whatever you believe, you
Wow.
can't really. It's a
Now that's a big one. Your self image is the limit, is the boundary or the limit of
yeah,
your performance in your life. Yeah,
performance. Yeah, yeah.
that is so cool though, right? Because and we're gonna dive right into the wellness conversation because I know we had that idea. We've explored this idea that when I was a triathletes would wake up every morning and go swim, bike, run.
Mhm.
And so when I define myself as a triathlete, my actions or that image I had of myself, my actions followed it. And as
Yes.
soon as I said, okay, I'm no longer doing triathlons, mentally, there was no need for me to wake up and swim, bike, and run. So that actually trailed off, right? So that's interesting. But I want to go that. Say it again. Your self-image is your
So
boundary,
the self image, just the
right?
self image, the image you hold of yourself sets the boundaries of performance in your life. So if this is how you hold the image you hold of yourself, your performance would fall within that image. So you can't really expand because why do I have to expand? Because then you start making up all these stories, and that's the image you hold of yourself.
Okay. I'm with it. I'm taking it down. I'm posting this today. I'll attribute it all to you. So let's update on this. How do you define wellness?
Wellness, it's complex, right? So when you look at it, like the human body, we're talking about the balance chemically, physically, emotionally.
Mhm.
So maintaining and achieving that balance that equals wellness. That's to me.
So the me in concept is that intersection, that balance, or the peak performance being the intersection of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. And every time I say spiritual well-being, I go to that place of not the churchy stuff. And I don't want you to have any of your triggers or trauma that's associated with the Pentecostal church to
I
come up,
know.
but I'll leave that alone. So you're saying balance. Um,
Yeah.
where do we start? Let's say someone's starting and you're helping someone. This is your vocation and you're helping someone. So I want to start for 2025. I'm going into this year and, that idea of the largest, the largest percentage of New Year resolutions surround our physical wellness, right? Where does someone start? How do you help someone? Let's have that practical conversation of how do we help someone starting out who wants to start? How do we give them the tools to get started on that wellness journey?
First of all, I mean, it's a question you ask yourself. You need to ask yourself, why am I doing this? This is the physical aspect, right? So why? There's so much the trainer or coach can do because they're seeing you for an hour a day, 3 times a week, and we have 24 hours in a day. So if you're expecting that trainer to transform your body doing 3 hours or 4 hours a week, there's nothing they can do. So the rest has to fall on you as a
Right.
person.
Okay. So
So,
accountability.
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So you have to ask yourself why.
Okay.
What is your why? Why are you doing this? And then you commit to that why.
Okay. But everyone says why. But what if I just okay? So I want to be healthier, right? I think sometimes we complicate it, but I'm hearing figure out the reason why you want to do it. And I'm joking, like I
Yeah.
think so many of my friends turned the corner and they would start working out because they wanted to go to Carnival in Grenada in August. So they start working out in January. That has been a really interesting one
But
to note,
that's
right?
that's their why, right? So
Yeah.
once they get to the carnival and after carnival, what happens?
Okay. You kind of
It's
go
that
right backwards or you
you
get
go
back.
right
Okay.
back. So there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
sustainability there. You can't sustain it. So
Okay.
the goal is to have this become a lifestyle, right? It's part of you. It's like you wake up, you brush your teeth. You have to move. You have to eat certain foods. It just becomes part of you.
Mhm. I like that one. So I'm going to keep going back to it, right? Figure out your why. Understand that you are accountable for the success. It's just not going to be the trainer. And to make it sustainable, it has to be lifestyle driven, right? If
Yes.
I'm okay. All right. And then what else? Where else we go from there? So I got my why. I'm 47 years old. I'm a former athlete. I don't know if I ever brought this up to you, but being an athlete, stopping the way that I stopped, it was just abrupt. I ended up with a regular heartbeat in my 20s. And that's something that I was managing. The triathlon stuff, I became a triathlete later on in life. And I did that mainly for the heart health, right? But understanding if it's good for your heart is good for your brain. So it was intertwined. I suffer with narcolepsy, so that makes sleeping and recovery a little bit harder. But at 47 now, I want to be mobile. I want to be fit, and I want to do things that are sustainable because I'm learning that sustainability or longevity is definitely attached to our physical strength. So that's this is my conversation, right? So I'm coming to you with this. Where do we go from there?
You sort of answered your question about the sustainability
Okay, all
and
right,
the longevity.
all right.
So when you look at things you listed out, and I'll take you back to the beginning, wellness and how I approach it with people, because we're complex beings, right? So there's no one size fit all. So I can say, hey, here's your program, go do it. I need to understand who Nigel is, Nigel's lifestyle. Oh, Nigel used to be a triathlete and he did all that, meaning, oh, Nigel is coachable. So I'm able to a certain extent, push Nigel past certain boundaries because you're coachable. You've achieved all this, success. And when it comes to narcolepsy, then we handle that because that plays a vital role with regeneration. So we'll have to figure out ways to manage that because, again, it's the chemical, the physical, and the emotional, all three together.
Yeah.
Will give you the results you're looking for.
I really like that, right? Because, if the chemical part of it is if you feel well, chances are you will show up with the right attitude and you can approach whatever situation with that positive attitude that gives you a better chance of having the right outcome. You talked about coachability, right? And we're going to go back and I want to make sure we dive into it. Why is that so important, right? Because what I found in my coaching journey and some of the worst experiences that I've had, it was individuals who were coming to me but already had the answers. Right. So I've done assessments for people and they came back already knowing without going through the process or trusting the process, they had all of the answers. So it means almost that I couldn't help them. So once you said coachability, what is the attitude that you would expect a client who is most successful or who creates a sustainable practice? What are they looking like? What are they showing up as for you?
Okay. So let's go back to when you did triathlon, that period, that phase. So you had the attitude, which is your thoughts, feelings, and actions, got you to, that level of achievement. So anyone who has an athletic background, you've played some sort of sports in the past, that it doesn't really matter how long, but if you're able to get that fire going, like you're able to maintain it because this is something you've done in the past. So that attitude will come into play again, where you start thinking, okay, this is what I want to achieve. It's that feeling like, okay, I need to push this. And the job of the coach, again, is to push, so when you go training as a coach, I'll push you even further. And know that with that attitude, like, I'm going to crush this. So you see what I mean? So it's different from someone who has never played any sport before. No. And that it's like from ground zero, you have to like train them and get them to that level. So everyone is capable of achieving that, whatever level of success.
I think that's the one thing like I like to say, right? We have greatness in all of us. And provided that we approach anything with self-awareness and honesty, we can actually practice and become who we want to be. So I have my why. I have the right attitude. What's next? You understand me. What else would I do? What else would I go? Where else would I go? What else am I thinking?
So you need a fuel, which is your nutrition.
Okay. So you're starting. Okay. That's interesting that you're going to start with nutrition. Sorry to cut you off though, right? Because everyone starts with exercise. So sorry, go ahead. So,
So you need a fuel to move the vehicle, right?
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So you need a proper nutrition. And for clients, I always say it's a good thing to understand what your basal metabolic rate is. And then with those numbers, we can either, whatever your goals are, we can work with those numbers. But nutrition is vital. It's very important. And I noticed a lot of people may struggle with that.
Okay. So what's the basal metabolic rate? What
So
is
this
that?
is how much calories your body just needs to
Okay.
sustain itself, just to stay alive.
Right.
So with that number, if your goal is, oh, I need to add more muscle, we need to use that number as the foundation and add more calories to that to build more muscle. If it's to lose weight, then we look at a calorie deficit. But again, remember the chemical, the body, and the emotions, they all tie in. When you want to
consistent peak performance. Okay. So yeah, that's interesting. So my basal metabolic rate, the last time I did it, was I needed 2,000 calories to lay on the couch every day. But I couldn't get more than that, right? So 2,000 calories to lay on the couch. So we have a basal metabolic rate. And how am I thinking of nutrition then? Are there concepts, themes that I'm putting forward, things that I should consider? You hear macros, you have micronutrients.
Yeah, macros, yeah.
What's next then from that perspective?
So we work on your macros.
Okay.
So this is how much you should be eating based on what your goal is. So this is how much you eat a day,
Okay.
First thing in the morning, pre-workout, post-workout, snack, all of that.
So when you say macros, give a little bit more on macros, for the person who's listening who may have been curious about it. What are some of those things that what's a little bit like drilling down just one level down into what the macronutrients are?
So you have your carbs, your protein, your fats. So under carbs, it could, I'm just spitting out numbers here. It could be 400 grams of carbs a day. Protein could be around either 350, fats could be 60. Now, those numbers are your macros. Your meals, each meal you have to figure out, okay, how much carbs is in this, how much protein is in this. So you start to like sort of measure, because you have to hit a certain number given to you. So you start measuring out, and then for you to hit this number at the end of the day, you do it the next day, just like that.
And how do you set the targets? What is it based off of?
What, the numbers?
Yeah. So like if you
your
say
basal metabolic rate.
Okay.
That's
so
the number you start with.
Is there anything else that you consider in that portion of it? So the basal metabolic rate, and I'm sure there are a bunch of things that will go into that, but is it your weight? Is it like, are there other things that would?
Yeah, because that does move though. So you have to keep checking, it does move. So if you lose weight, it's going to reduce.
Okay. All right. So for me, I'm a svelte 200 pounds. I'm going to believe that. So then from that, I will have the amount of macronutrients that I would need. Let's say my goal is to be fitter, change body composition just a bit. So reduce fat, gain a little bit of muscle. So then I will have a macronutrient cycle that's based on that, right? Yes. And okay, so I got that now. And then where else do we go from there? What's next?
You have your nutrition in place, and then you go to the movement portion of it, which is the exercise.
Right.
And that's the fun part of it, right?
That's the fun part of it. Yeah, you're not a nice person. I've had some really interesting workouts with you, right? Where you keep pushing me to that old version of myself, and I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. And you're making it way too intense for me. That, like, as we're saying, intensity, right? So there's so many fads that people would do, and I do believe that fitness is individual, right? What advice do you give someone who is, again, starting on this fitness journey or this wellness journey? What other advice you would give them when it comes to the movement part of it? I know you have instruction in yoga, you do mobility work. What for that same that listener, that the person who's tuning in, what advice would you give them?
Looking at strength training,
right?
That we're looking at cardiovascular, we're looking at, yoga. It's just You're not sedentary, you're moving.
Okay.
So you may see people doing squats, doing pushes, doing pulls. These are functional movements, right?
Mhm.
But it's how you build off that. But again, why are you doing this? You need to know why. Otherwise, you're just all over the place. There should
You
be a
know,
why.
that is interesting, right? It's so important to get people who are like-minded to do this with, to help you with it as you move forward. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but one of the workouts that we did together, I had knee surgery. The last time I had knee surgery was in 2020. And I've always limited, I've always placed a ceiling on what I could do because I have a knee injury. And there was one workout that you and I had that I couldn't really walk well after, but you actually helped me to push 3 times the weight that I was actually normal, right? This is just a testimony of, I think sometimes consistency is having company or people to do it with, but also
Yes.
having a coach or someone else to guide you can help you to reach new limits. Before we transition, Obi, into how you manage you, if you're, maybe you can give an example of this integrated approach and the client relationship that you're most proud of, right? So you're taking someone from, understanding their why to the integrated approach of wellness between being, the movement and the weight training part of it. What's your proudest client moment, someplace, some way that you help someone to move that you're proudest of?
There are a couple.
Right.
It's
Give us the best
been
one.
I've been in the industry for years. So there are a couple. I'll give you two. Seeing two 60-year-olds transform from day one when they started off with me till today. I mean, we're still working as client and trainer. Seeing their whole body change, their movement, and it's just that confidence come back and walking with the shoulders pulled back,
Right.
head high. It's a feeling. I like that. Just seeing, someone at 60 move a lot better than someone in their 30s.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
it's
What
an
are some of the
amazing feeling
numbers
to
though?
observe.
What are some of the numbers in that? Right. So when you're saying it, so like, what are some of the things that happened that allowed them to increase this confidence? Walk in the room with their shoulders back and head high. What are some of the metrics that, what are some of the things that you do? And I'm only saying this because I'm seeing it. I'm noting that as we age, as we get older, we place a cap on our potential. It's almost like I'm old, so I can't do this, rather than saying I should find a new way or a different way of moving this forward. But what were some of those things that they accomplished, that were measured, that allowed them to feel this success, or even for you to feel it for them?
So first of all, I observed with both of them, they're both 60-year-olds. I did ask them questions. I said, what changed here? I mean, everything is the same. The training, the nutrition, what changed? And both answers get to us, I'm turning 60, it's now or never.
Okay.
That shift, and they were all in. So they're like, these are the numbers, this is what I have to eat, I will follow it. And this is scientifically proven, right? Like if you follow this, you start to see results, So I noticed the improvement over time. And again, with the training, like you said, if you tell yourself, I can't really push this weight, you are not going to push it.
Push the weight. Okay. All right.
All right. Back to that limiting beliefs and the image we hold. So helping them push past certain weights they couldn't do in the past. It's that limiting beliefs has just shattered, and they're like, oh, I can push it, and it gets stronger. They grow, as I say, they're putting on muscle. So like,
so so is there over the peak of the time, like, are we talking weight loss? Because I want to make sure that I know you would probably measure it differently, but like with following this framework, this structure, I
Yeah.
want to make sure that the audience is getting, okay, it translates into this. Do you have numbers like weight loss or, sizes lost? Do you have any
Oh,
of
you
that
mean
information?
the numbers? So one was 60.
60
The
pounds?
yes, the other was 160. 160. It went from 201 to 163. So
Okay. And
yeah,
that's at 60. Those are
the
significant
60 year
numbers.
olds. Those are
Okay.
60 year olds. Yeah.
All right. We need to have a different conversation. I didn't know this. That's actually pretty awesome, right? Those are significant numbers. And over what time? Because sometimes we're not as patient as we should be. So over what time?
That's always the issue because you start off and you're like, I can't. So remember what I said, it has to be a lifestyle. It just has to become second year, you
Mhm.
know? And one of them, I think both of them was over the same 2024, that year.
Mhm. Oh, wow. That's big. And they've kept it off.
Yes.
Okay. Because they're consistent. All right. So transitioning now into, you have all of this stuff. We've talked mindfulness. We've talked gratitude. We talked abundance. We've talked understanding your why, and then understanding your why and creating a formula for you to move every day. And I think you said one of the things to me that was so calming. You said you were working out, but you looked at it as your church, right? Like, you don't take a client through something that you don't experience yourself. So
Absolutely.
you're walking or you're embodying this, right? So
Yes.
how do you care for you, Obi, so that you show up in that way to support your clients consistently? And I should actually roll that back a little bit. One of the things that I do for each guest who's on the podcast is that I do their emotional intelligence assessment.
Mhm.
And that emotional intelligence assessment is the EQI 2.0 assessment. It allows the individual to gain a bird's eye view, a data-driven way into how they're showing up in the current moment. Some other tools that actually be your preferences, but this is a point in time assessment that shows you how you perceive yourself, that internal voice that you have, how you express yourself, how you develop and maintain interpersonal relationships, how you solve problems, and how you manage stress. So over those dimensions, there are also subscales that we would actually look at. And for each of the guests, one of the things that, as I get their stories on how they maintain themselves, we kind of try to intertwine it with the data of, hey, this is how you're showing up. This is the profile that you're having. What are some of the things that you would work on? What are some of the things that you would bring forward? So I want to make sure that we're considering that in when we have these conversations and how individuals manage themselves. So there's the actual part of what the guests would actually do, but from my learning and me geeking out about that intersection of human performance and emotional intelligence, this is kind of where I kind of get really, really excited, right?
Yeah.
So, Obi, yeah, talk to me about, well, one, how you manage yourself, what's your routine, and then what are some of the key things that you learned through the emotional intelligence assessment that you actually had?
Like looking at the components when it comes to exercise, which is the movement, nutrition, regeneration, I approach all three. And internally, I also need to sort of shut out the world in a sense. So I I don't really stay close to my phones on my days off. So this way I can really disconnect because once you grab it, you're sucked in, right?
I
So
hear you.
I'm able to disconnect, recharge, and then ready for the week ahead. It's just how I've approached it.
Yeah. So you're saying the idea is you are applying all of the principles that we've had, but then you also
Yes.
make sure you finding time to recover by unplugging. One of the interesting things as you're saying that is you talk about nutrition, and I find that sometimes we're all dogmatic, but in the pandemic, one of the things that we ate every week together, right? Every Sunday for about a
Yeah.
year, we ate together. but
Yeah.
there's nothing that you said that you don't eat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you had bread, right?
Yeah.
Like I bake bread, you've had bread,
Yeah.
you'll have meat, you'll have, and that's something I never quite, put your finger on, because every time you hear someone actually says, I'm going to get healthy, it's like, no more carbs, no more sugar, no more. What do you say about that? And I'm sorry to take us on that tangent, but it is just one of those interesting things, because as fit as you are, you don't have any of those requirements of yourself, right?
So let's go back to the macros. So whatever you're eating, it ties back into those numbers. So if I'm having bread, that's carbs. I need carbs for the day. I need to get up to maybe 250 grams that day.
Right.
So yes, I'm going to have carbs. I'm going to have whatever meat is available. I'm going to have X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I do eat, but there's also a mindfulness to that. So it's like, okay, you don't have to eat till you're stuffed.
Right.
You can have this. It's a balance. Everything for me is finding that balance.
Finding that
That's
balance.
my personal approach. So finding that balance, so you're not on one end or you're not on the other. You're like right there.
Okay. All right. So balance. I like that one. So you're practicing what you're preaching. And what else? What did you learn from the emotional intelligence assessment about you and how you show up in the world? Or was there any insights that you gleaned from it?
So what I find interesting about that is it is spot on. And based on the results, I had to apply certain things where I know I kind of fell short and I was working, that's the whole point of it. Like looking at the results.
But I'm sorry, but no one, like we get so much data in and no one actually puts action to it, right? So it warms my heart to hear you say that you took the information and you put it into practice, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where growth happens, in practice.
Yeah. I believe that's the whole point of doing it. You want to see how, what it says and how you can work better. Like these are the results. Here are your results. Okay. So this is where I need to improve myself.
What are some of the insights you gained from the EQI assessment?
One thing I really liked about the EQI was it did point out the blind spots, like areas that we really may not pay attention to, and taking all that information and applying it, doing the work. You want to improve yourself. It's been very effective for me in navigating, the coaching realms. So we look at my scores, like the empathy and assertiveness. The empathy was quite high, meaning, like you explained to me, that I do care for people and that's why I do what I do. But the assertive part of it was quite low. And which means, yes, I do care, but I'm taking this all in and there is no boundary. There are no boundaries here. So,
oh, wow. Okay. I like that one. All right.
And I started working on that by disconnecting. Remember when I said, like, I leave my phone out? And so that was how I was able to, set boundaries. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's actually a good one. So just for the audience to appreciate, I talked about the 5 dimensions, how you speak to yourself, your internal voice, how you express yourself. We develop and maintain interpersonal relationships, problem solving, and stress tolerance. So what Obi was just sharing, one of the interpersonal relationship subcategories is empathy, caring and understanding for others. And one of the self-expression components is assertiveness, to speak up for yourself, to share constructively your beliefs. And it's essentially asking for what you want. So what Obi just shared was that in a lot of things in life, what burnout happens with people who care about people is that empathy is really high, assertiveness is low, and you end up taking on too much of individuals' issues, which actually leads you to burnout. In the professional sense, think about it as having an open door policy where you let everyone walk into your office and you would be willing to help them. But at the end of the day, they're gone home. And that was one of the things I worked on. and you have to stay to finish the things that you would need to do. Obi, you talked about transitioning between the coaching realms. And I'm assuming that you're meaning that you're going from being mostly the physical wellness part of it to that constructive or that overarching life coaching aspect of it. And you said it helped you in that transition. What do you mind sharing just how the data supported that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So back to the data, it has the portion of self-regard and, like you said, your inner voice. And a part of me, I want to expand. I want to keep growing. Yes, I'm in this realm of wellness and coaching, but what's more? What's out there to explore? And how can I use that? Whatever tools I gather, how can I use this to enhance, my business? How can I use this to enhance what I'm doing? And how can I use it to enhance serving the community?
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. So managing the conversations that you have with yourself about you moving forward, right? That is actually powerful. I must say though, Obi, one of the things that inspires me, right? I look a lot, I observe a lot as I go through, is the fact that you practice so much of the things that you talk about, right? And even just the idea of you go back to get credentialed in things, and you're way too humble, because not a lot of trainers would actually have a master's degree in exercise science, right? There are people who do it, but not everyone is passionate or would get to that level and still go out and seek additional accreditations or go out and say, okay, I am going to do a life coaching certification. So I'm just saying, I see you and I'm inspired by what you're doing, even outside of us working out together from time to time. As we wrap up, I want one closing thought for the guests. There's something that you would want to leave with the audience and your wellness journey and how it might inspire them. And then two, how can individuals find you if they wanted to work with you going forward, if they wanted to stay in contact with you, wanted to connect with you going forward?
Okay. So when it comes to the wellness industry and you have a goal and you want to achieve this goal, think of how you can achieve this goal and not why you can't. So you have this goal in place. I am going to do X, Y, and Z. Things will happen. Life is going to keep, like I said, lifing.
Life is going to keep lifing.
But you have your mind set on something. So you think of how you can approach that and how you're going to do it, as opposed to, why I can't, because it's raining. I had this.
Okay. I like that one, right? The mindset is a set point of how you would actually see the world. Because if you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. I'm going to keep stealing. The image you hold of yourself sets the boundary of performance in your life. Yes. So I'll steal that one as a wrap up. How can individuals connect with you?
You can find me on my website. That's affinitycoaching.com. So affinity, AFFINITI, coaching.com.
Okay. Awesome.
Just send me an email.
Okay. Obi, thank you for this. For me, it's always inspiring. I wish we could share more of the amazing conversations we have together about living life and how we can show up as our best selves. But thank you. I appreciate the time you spent with me today. And
thank you for having me here.
Go there. Yeah. Appreciate you.
Right. Thank you.
If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media, share your insights, or leave a review. Your journey to greater emotional intelligence starts now. So let's keep this conversation going. And until we meet again in this space, take very good care of you.